great, but what they didn't realize was just how much the students embraced it.
I think we have that as someone who decides, and I think we have all of that in our department because we have a lot of competitions, a lot of different events where the students learn to program and they get to do it in a real way, solving problems. And they even introduced a course where they go out, it's like an internship, I think it's, I don't know, 1 credit or something, so they actually go out. So we have that motivation and that love of doing it, but we have really high failure rates.
Right.
So our problem is dealing with these failure rates. It's not a matter of motivation, it's a matter of figuring out why it happens.
Exactly. And again, that goes back to the anecdote I gave you about Stanford, where when you actually test the students what they really know, you realize there was a book that came out about 5 years ago called Academically Adrift, which did a massive survey in the United States again. They looked at how much students learn from their freshman year to their senior year when they graduate. What they found, and it's shocking, 40% of the survey of students, this was massive, tens of thousands of students, 40% learned zero between the freshman and their senior year in critical thinking, writing, processing skills. And so what they discovered was that we do a really bad job in this feedback loop where you have, it sounds to me like, sorry I'm going on a tangent, but you've created a really nice feedback loop. Students do the work, they see if it works or not, but then you realize that there's a big failure rate. But then that's your feedback, right? So when you have a glitch in the system, you figure out where the glitch is, you fix the bug, right? It's actually a wonderful model for how to think about teaching and learning. I'm an educator, right? And so I can't do anything without sometimes mentioning John Dewey, right? So John Dewey is like this philosopher of education. There's this lovely little quote that I always have in the back of my head, which is that if you think you're teaching, but your students aren't learning, it's like you're a used car salesman who said that you sold a car, but nobody bought it. Like, it doesn't make sense. You can't say you sold a car if nobody's bought the car. So how can we say we were teaching if somebody wasn't learning, right? And so Dewey has this really strong notion that the two things are fundamentally linked. You have to have the feedback. But if you don't have the feedback, you're just going to keep doing the same thing again and again and again. That once you have that feedback from the students, from the community, from yourself, that's when the real growth happens. And yeah, you're going to realize that sometimes there's failure. But I think that's a moment where you as a faculty, I assume, can say, okay, let's change our intro course. Or let's change the way we oversee the internship, the apprenticeship, right? Or maybe we need stronger methodology courses, or I don't know.
I think we're looking right now at the background of students.
Right, it could be that. Yeah.
So what about the model where we judge a teacher's effectiveness or course's effectiveness based on pass rate? A low pass rate could mean that I'm too critical, or it could mean that I have a very good case. which is right. Why are we doing that? And how can we change that?
Oh, it's
I just want to jump in while you're thinking about the possibility of it being a very great course if they're not doing well. It's the same used car salesman thing we're saying. If no one's doing well, then it ain't a good course.
But we talk sometimes, we don't do it in society, but I have heard about the curve thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody could do well, but only so many are allowed to pass.
That's another.
Yeah, we mark them on a curve, and only the top 30% of get an A, or the top 10% get an A.
That's another issue.
I mean, the problem is there's so many, these are what's called conflicting goals in education, right? You've got policy goals, you've got graduation goals. If the goal, and again, you have to decide which goals you're going after, right? Because again, philosophers talk about this as the conflicting goals model, right? There's the classic thought experiment. If there's a trolley going down the tracks, have you heard about this? And you could either pull the switch and it goes in one way and kills 5 people, or you don't pull the switch, which means you don't do anything, but it kills 1 person. Right? And so there's this whole notion of what do you do and what are the conflicting goals? Right? Or do you kill an old person? Or there's philosophers talk about this all the time.
Right.
What you're talking about is conflicting goals,
Yeah.
right? Do you have high standards, or do you let everybody get a diploma? And they're conflicting, and so you have to choose. If your goal is learning, right? If the goal is learning, you have to, I believe, start where the students are, right? You have to know where they're coming in, and then you have to figure out how to get them to the next level. It's hard.
But
then it will
it's
sink.
but if everybody passes my course, does that mean that I am watering it down? Or is it that I could just be a teacher who's reaching my students and ready to
I don't know.
Why not?
You see, you wouldn't be able to make a statement about it unless you see what your outcomes were and what the students have done. You just can't talk about these things in a vacuum. So you have to see it in relation to the course, what the students have done, what were your outcomes to make that kind of call, because it's not something that is across the board.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you could make that statement about just, we look at it and we think, pass, if you pass, if you have 80% pass rate, it might be this or that, but you can't make that statement unless you
Can't
know.
generalize it.
Exactly, you have to actually look at,
And the problem is, to go back to the computer science example, students come in with very different levels of knowledge. Some students will come in with zero knowledge. Some students will come in with 70% level knowledge. Some students will come in as honors students. And so the problem is they're each going to end the course in a very different place. But this is what Vygotsky called the zone of proximal development. And you only can bring students, and there's all these theories of student development. There's like 4 or 5 levels. And the basic rule of thumb is students in one semester can't jump more than one level. They can't go from what's declarative to procedural, procedural to contextual. You can't jump from 0 to 100. And so it becomes really hard if you have a class of 50 students.
But I think bearing in mind the differentiated learning environment where you have people coming with at different learning levels, I think the success really in the teaching. I taught before. I taught not at university. I taught at the A-level math and physics. And I think that to me, the success really is the teachers knowing how to teach, meeting the students knowing how to learn. And I think when there's a synergy between the two, I don't know the ideal way how that could be created. I think the synergy between both the teachers knowing how to teach and students knowing how to learn is where true success is going to happen in the learning space.
And then that might be in conflict with what, in her context, her system indicates is acceptable, an acceptable measure of success. Right? So as you say, some of the students may achieve something, but it may not be aligned with what they were looking for.
Maybe I'm being a little too radical here. So I again, in my class, right, after a couple of weeks, I tell my students, you are allowed, I say to my students, because they take 3 or 4 other classes during the semester, right? Like I assume your students, right? I say to my students, these are teacher education students, go to any class, math, history, physics, whatever it is, and you're allowed to stand up at any moment in that class and tell them I said so. And you're allowed to say or ask, who cares? You're always allowed, I said. And if the professor can't answer that question, I say to my students, I'm kind of joking, right, because they can't really do this, right? I say, if they can't answer that question, who cares? You can walk out. And I say this because I want them to realize, again, that the learning isn't just to pass the test. The learning is supposed to actually, if you're spending a lot of money and a lot of time in that class, right, especially Merrimack College, it's a private university, $45,000 tuition, their mom or dad pays for it, but whatever, right? And so they spend 40 years, they have to pay another $13,000 for room and board, so they spend a lot of money. And so I say to them, you are allowed to stand up and ask, who cares? And if your professor can't answer that, walk out. And then we start the conversation of why should that be the measure of learning? And that becomes a really important discussion for them to accept. Again, maybe they're just there to get through. Maybe they're just there because they don't know. Maybe they're just there because the professor can't answer the question. That becomes a really important discussion. So you can tell all your students the same thing. Tell them I said it's okay. Okay?
I think that coming back to my original question,
Yeah.
we have to get to the point as teachers that we are okay with being asked.
Yeah.
So what? Who cares? You know, why do I need to do this? And that becomes a real, I think, cultural shift in our thinking, that it's okay to ask questions. I often talk about the fact that sometimes I believe we live in a society where questions are not allowed, appreciated, that's the word.
They're allowed.
Sometimes not even allowed, save them for the end, you know? But no, it's not appreciated. The question becomes an attack.
But you know
And
what's so wonderful is the real world actually is full and full of questions, right? So that's what we get into this weird thing. When I get stuck in my four walls of the classroom, when I get stuck in my textbook, there's only answers. But as soon as I walk out the door and I tell my students, okay, figure out how to get a grant, figure out whether the gas station is meeting code, figure out whether or not this bridge is going to be sustainable in a 3.4 earthquake, figure out whether or not this woman has high cholesterol. Questions are everywhere. Questions are everywhere. And so it doesn't quite work, but my ideal as a teacher is that the class runs itself. I try to create moments all the time where I do zero. Where if I can create the right projects, the class will run itself, because students will come back and they'll say, why is it that the girls raise their hands and the boys yell? Why is it that these darker skinned kids are in the special ed classes and the lighter skinned kids in the United States are in the honors classes? Why is it that they can learn this but not this? And then the questions come from their daily interactions in the real world, and then it's my job just to guide that process. But that's really hard to create. It's really hard to create a class where I'm not in charge, but the world is in charge.
I mean, do you think that it's actually maybe more a question for you, but if a gate gets removed, do you think we might see a shift in our students' attitudes and that it's less of just an automatic transition from high school to university, if suddenly they're sacrificing something. I mean, I'm all for free education, I think it's terrible if they remove it, but I wonder if that's...
I feel yes with the session. I'll tell you why. I have classes that sometimes sit close to 200, and some of them are just transactional moments. They say to me, and they come straight to me and say, Miss, I hear because of what I said, I have come and do that for you. So you see, when you're trying to push me to do more than what I have to do, just tell me what I need to pass and get that certificate, because I just want to get it. It's a free education, or he said I have to come, I'm not doing any of this stuff to come.
I personally, coming from a country in which we've had free education and it's changed, and it changed for the very reason it's going to change here. In the 1970s in Canada, they made a decision that only the elite was going to university or extended education. So what can we do to get the people from the blue collar groups to come through? So they created a system that would allow you to have grants and loans. So when I went through, my brother and I, almost the same age, you know, those twins that are born in the same year. So he gets a great grant. I get the loan. And the question I always had was, why did he get that and I got that? But at the end of the day, they began to get rid of the grants and then they had the loans. It didn't stop anybody from going to school. But the system has to be there to break the loan part, which is what they brought in. So education still is valued, but they've shifted the value onto the student. Now the problem, of course, is that some students graduate with huge debt, and what do you do with that as a society? But you cannot grow, you cannot be global thinkers and workers if you do not educate your population. And that's a decision that Canada made, and it's a decision that Britain made when they shifted theirs as well. Should it be free? Well, of course, we should be valuing this. But there will be always those politicians that will say, well, why should I pay for you to go to school? And it becomes that elitist thing. So it's the balance between the elitist thing, who gets to go to university versus who doesn't. And the system has to have the loan part now. And if they don't put the loan part in, that will be interesting to see what happens.
20 years ago, I took a loan to go to university. So in Huffington Post, I just had to get 10% collateral, and I paid my loan off after a while. So I definitely appreciated my education, and I couldn't afford to carry another semester or another year because I would have to take another year's loan. So I do think that it makes you appreciate what you get when it is income.
I think the issue of getting that, we can all relate to, is how do you get student engagement? Right? How do you get student buy-in? Is it by paying for it? Is it by having a dynamic professor? Is it by having whatever? I mean, that's what's underlying all of this conversation, is how do you get students to buy into their own learning? And I think what the research is very clear on is it's actually really hard to do.
Because I think, I was just thinking, it's a complex thing, it's so many different factors. And in your case, it might have been one thing in that situation where you had a desire, you were committed, you were dedicated, you wanted to do this. There are other people who feel the same way. There are some people who, they're committed as well, but they may not be as prepared as you were at that time to come into university. And so they're coming in at a bit of a disadvantage to other people. So it's not that they don't want to do well, they don't want to learn, but they're not prepared in the same way.
Right.
So you have that group. Then you have another group who into the credentialing. Then you have another group who they just don't know how to study. They what you said, the 16,000 hours. You know that they're stuck in that. So you have all these different conflicts and influences and personalities, and we always try to find one answer.
There will always be those things, so that we're not talking about stereotypes.
No.
It has created this.
No.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we try to find one easy answer, and the thing is not easy.
Well, one thing I would say then, please, is that I guess what I keep saying, you're not alone. Right, and I could spend hours giving you research data about, like, in the United States, the research shows that over 60% of high school students, literally every single day, are bored in school. They've done massive surveys about this. At Harvard, right, so I give you a look at Harvard, they did this research study where more than half of students stopped coming to lectures after halfway through the semester. Right, so this is, you're not isolated. This happens at Harvard, this happens across the United States, this happens in Europe. This problem is everywhere.
The situation, I think, is multi-layered. You have a society that loves education. Education was always conceived as a way to leverage people's social mobility, as a way for social mobility, and you have a system put in place by well-meaning leaders and said if you're going to educate the descendants of slaves and indentees to take charge of their society, then it will have to be free. And I know, for example, people like myself, when I started this process in the 1970s, did I say that? That if it had not been, the opportunity had not been there for free education, it would have been hugely challenging. You also have a directive that has become ingrained into our psyche that says that the future of the nation's children is in the school bags. So you have an orientation towards education. You have an education that is not tied to service or to community intervention, community involvement, that is quite esoteric and removed from the real world. And you have a society that right now is begging for its practical application. It's people who are tuned. That is why I like my carpenters and my gardeners and my whatever. These are people who produce, well, I mean, I'm not saying that our academics don't produce. I want to be careful here. But they produce services for their money. And you have people who have been attuned to feel that the thing to do for upward mobility is to produce ideas which may not be relevant in terms of practical application, and that is what gives them status. So I think we have a mess. We also have a situation that is increasingly starved for cash, and we will soon learn what is to be valued and what governments will continue to pay for. And we also have, this is the part that I find very difficult, highly trained people who understand. I mean, none of what I said there was rocket science. I mean, endless people understand that this is what we have. And yet the very people who should be making the interventions and who should have the capacity and who have the position to make a difference are the same people who do what we say in Trinidad, throw up the hands. We have a throw up the hands mentality.
Just to make you feel better, right? Just for a minute, right? 2 points. One, we created our own problem.
Yeah.
Our social justice goals of trying to provide access and opportunity for more and more individuals in our society. Now I'm talking about Trinidad or the United States or Europe or Canada. We created our own problems because back in the early 1900s, less than 1% of the population got a higher education. Today, the majority of our population, whether in the United States or in Trinidad, at least participates in higher education. And so in a sense, we've created our own problems because the more we open up education, the more we realize that teaching, and this is the second thing that I want to really point out, teaching, I think I always say this, teaching is actually harder than rocket science. Rocket science is actually really easy because you can control all the variables. Rocket science is just physics. And in the end, physics is actually pretty simple. But teaching is
Go on now.
No! You cannot control. You can, again, remember, you can control a lecture, right? That's what I was saying before. But true deep teaching, you can't control that process. Teaching is harder than rocket science because you cannot control, that's what's called, what sociologists and political scientists call a wicked problem. A wicked problem is something that where there are too many variables with too many unknowns and too many ends, too many degrees of freedom. In physics, there are a very logical and bounded set of constraints. Right? It's called gravity, it's called force, and blah, blah, blah. Right? But the point is, teaching is way harder. So we've created our own problem, and in creating our own problem, it's actually really hard to solve. It's really easy to teach to the top 1%. It's really easy to teach to students who are already self-motivated, who already come in knowing the things you're going to teach them, whose parents have already taught a lot of this, and who are already inclusive. It's really, really hard to teach to everybody else if all you're doing is lecture.
Does anybody have any other burning questions they want to? Well, it's not quite, we still have about 20 minutes, but there might be a question that you've been a little bit shy to ask, or you just didn't get in amongst the people that are more vocal and you're waiting for your chance.
But we have a question. The massively open online courses.
Yeah.
They were supposed to create this big shift, and it didn't, right?
Yeah.
Is it because the students need lecturers? Students need to have that. Well, the students need teachers, not lecturers, but yeah. Is it that is what is missing from?
So so MOOCs, right? Massively open online courses, right? There's now hundreds of thousands of students that enroll in them. The way I think about it, there's a little bit of a long answer, but we have something in higher education called the iron triangle. Cost, access, quality. You can have two, but you can't have three. So MOOCs were supposed to break down the costs because it's really, really cheap to create a lecture that goes to a million students. You break the access problem because anybody with an internet connection can get it. The problem is what we discovered is that MOOCs had no quality. Is that they were just like the radio correspondence courses of the 1800s or Sesame Street in the mid 1960s or 70s. But it was just pushing out information. And so the problem with MOOCs has been that they hadn't yet, or still haven't, quite figured out the quality piece. Because if it's just a talking head, yes, it may be easier to listen in your pajamas at home than to drive to the lecture hall, but you still have the same problem. Now they're actually starting to make it better. They're making 5 or 7 minute modules. There's now just-in-time testing, so you can have an immediate test right away. They've created an automated feedback loops. There's something called adaptive learning, so if you don't know fractions, they'll first teach you about addition and subtraction, simplify. But in my vision, the tools keep getting better, that MOOCs can actually make a fundamental change. Think of your 500 student lecture halls for introduction to economics, or introduction to physics, or introduction to algebra, whatever it is, or even English. If you do it well, I believe, and we're starting to see this, you can do it through a MOOC. Students don't have to show up for classes, right? You do it through your open university, but right now, you don't do it at scale. You still do it through 20 students, one teacher. If a MOOC is done well with the quality piece, there are, I believe, ways that those introductory courses in 10 years can be obsolete.
But it always comes down to the fact that in most of this learning models, regardless of whether it's MOOC or an online learning, I taught for 12 years at University of online, offline. It comes down to what I got told as a grad student on my first day. It has nothing to do with the technology. It has to do with how you've structured your classroom. So regardless of whether you're teaching face-to-face, blended learning, or through a MOOC or online, if you don't know how to structure and engage students, it's going to fall flat on its face. And I think that's what's happened with some of the MOOCs, is that it just became this open area where people who were probably not doing a very good job face-to-face turned out not to do a very good job online because they really didn't know how to do it face-to-face. And I think that's where the part of the problem is occurring with some of them.
The one difference is because a digital platform is programmable, right? I mean, when I teach a class, and if I make a mistake, I don't get to fix it for 6 months until I teach that class again. Online, in a MOOC or another format, right? I can tweak it, so instead of a 7-minute lecture, you have a 5-minute lecture. Or if I have a A/B testing for multiple choice, I can modify that just slightly and see that my students are learning better. So there's some wonderful labs now you can do electrical engineering, right? And you can see the feedback right away. Whereas before, there was just, you have to do it physically. So I think that the technology creates a moment where, if done right, if done bad, it's just as bad. But if done right, the feedback for students and faculty becomes really powerful. That I, as an instructor face-to-face, didn't have that opportunity.
What I also find is when people, I find it's interesting that students, or just learners in general, we just talk about the general population, is that those people who struggle to do higher education because it wasn't engaging, whatever the reasons were, gravitate towards those things. I have siblings who just love them. And they're telling me, oh, I just took a course and I now know how to program this. And I'm like, wow, like you would never have taken that. If that was offered to you at your local community college for free, you still wouldn't go over there and do it. And I find that behavior very fascinating in my siblings. So it kind of makes me wonder when you look at other people, what is it that, because I take a lot of MOOCs, and I always look to see if they're coming from Stanford or those places. But I find that they're very good because it stimulates your critical thinking. But I wonder why some people are so attracted to around professional development. I like it because they're free. And in healthcare in Canada, you don't get any money for professional development. So I was always propagating, looking for the free stuff, right? So,
Yeah, it was about 2 years ago, I wrote the university policy paper on MOOCs. Right? So if you go to the university center, university office of planning and development or publication section, you know.
So we have about 10 minutes left or so.
Can I actually get some feedback? Sorry, that's why I keep talking. Was this a helpful discussion? What's one thing you're going to walk away with this conversation? What's one thing you're going to, maybe take a next step about? Can I just get some feedback from people?
Well, on my side, maybe introducing an assessment where students do something that benefits others, so write up article papers or change, update the way people teach. So, yeah, so thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm thinking about that we need to, you reinforced our thinking before, we need to reconsider what is considered brilliant and what is considered, what's brilliant, what's bright, because even that in and of itself is problematic and continues to reinforce the status quo, continues to allow us to think of us as teachers being here and having all this information and continuing to lecture because that's what it looks like when you are bright, when you are brilliant. So from the way you do admissions, all of these different things, or even if we end up not having GATE anymore, to me it all connects to what we consider right, what we consider exceptional. It makes it forces you to really think more critically about everything that we do, and curriculum, everything. So that's where my mind is right now.
So just as you were talking, you said something that at the very beginning that linked to you, and I was linked to something I thought about, because I went to the matriculation ceremony, which is sort of a ceremony for kids going on from high school. And they introduced the person that was signing for the students, and they spent 3 minutes talking about how she had won all these awards for academics, like getting 100% on this and the highest grade on this. Not once in that first 3 minutes did they ever say what a wonderful person this young lady was, and that she had done this, something in the community. And I thought, wow, why didn't you start with the things she did in the community and start talking from that perspective and then say, oh, by the way, she also, placed first in her exams. And I wonder about that as well. Like, why is it that we always look the other way? And the poor student sitting in the classroom or sitting in the audience going, well, I just scraped my way into this university. I guess I should be lucky, rather than recognizing that there's lots of ways to get to the end point.
A few others, because my wait time is better than yours, so I'm just going to stay silent.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about the distinctive UWI graduate.
Yeah.
That started in 2007 in our strategic plan, and then it came into our current strategic plan with a few changes. There's about 12 points